They say nearly 3 million ships lie abandoned across the world, wrecked, deserted, or forgotten. From ancient warships to Pharaoh's lost vessels, some rest beneath the waves for over 2,000 years. Mysterious, silent, waiting. Let's dive into the 17 oldest abandoned ships ever discovered. Number 17. The Ghost Fleet of Chuuk Lagoon. Beneath the crystal waters of Micronesia's Chuuk Lagoon, a secret graveyard lies hidden. Here, the rusting remnants of over 60 ships and 275 aircraft slumber in the depths, silent witnesses to the fury of war. This is the legacy of Operation Hailstone, a fierce battle that transformed a once tranquil atoll into a watery tomb. In the early days of the war, the Japanese turned Chuuk into a heavily fortified base, a linchpin in their campaign to dominate the Pacific. Sheltered by the lagoon's embrace, their fleet lay at anchor, poised to strike at the heart of the Allied forces. But on February 17, 1944, the U.S. Navy launched a devastating surprise attack, raining down a maelstrom of bombs and torpedoes. For 2 days, the lagoon blazed with the fires of war, the air thick with smoke and the screams of the dying. When the guns fell silent, the once mighty Japanese armada lay shattered and broken on the seabed. Today, the wrecks of Chuuk Lagoon are a magnet for divers, drawn by the promise of exploring a submerged museum unlike any other. They glide through the ghostly hulks of ships and planes, their hulls encrusted with a rainbow of coral, home now to a myriad of tropical fish. Number 16. The Pharaoh's Solar Yacht. In the stifling darkness of an ancient Egyptian tomb, a ship lay hidden for over 4.5 millennia. But this was no ordinary vessel. It was a solar barge, a ritual craft built to carry the great pharaoh Khufu across the heavens in the afterlife. Buried alongside the ruler's mummified remains, it lay undisturbed for centuries, a ghostly sentinel guarding the pharaoh's passage to eternity. Discovered in 1954 by archaeologists excavating the Great Pyramid of Giza, the ship was a marvel of ancient engineering. Measuring 138 feet long and constructed entirely of cedar wood, it was a vessel fit for a king. But what made this find truly remarkable was its state of preservation. Despite the passage of nearly 5,000 years, the ship was almost perfectly intact, its timbers still smooth and its coils of rope still pliable. It was as if the ancient craftsmen had just stepped away, their work interrupted by the call of history. But perhaps the most astonishing aspect of Khufu's ship is that it was never meant to sail on earthly waters. It was a vessel built solely for the afterlife, a means for the pharaoh to navigate the celestial river that the ancient Egyptians believed carried the sun god Ra across the sky each day. In this sacred role, the ship was more than just a means of transport. It was a symbol of the pharaoh's divine right to rule, a physical manifestation of his power and authority. Number 15. The Rusting Sentinels of Shipwreck Beach. On the sun-baked shores of Hawaii's Lanai Island, a strange sight greets the eye. A line of rusting hulks, their metal bones glinting in the Pacific sun. This is Shipwreck Beach, a 6-mile stretch of sand that has become the final resting place for no fewer than 12 ill-fated vessels. Some, like the concrete behemoths YOGN-42 and YO-21, are relics of World War II, victims of the fierce storms and treacherous currents that batter this coastline. Others are the remains of 19th-century ships, deliberately scuttled by their owners to avoid the costs of proper disposal. The result is an eerie maritime graveyard, a place where the rusting skeletons of ships loom like the fossilized remains of ancient beasts. Twisted scraps of metal and shattered timbers litter the sand, a poignant reminder of the raw power of the sea. Some of the wrecks have been here so long that they have become part of the landscape, their weathered forms sculpted by time and tide into strange, almost organic shapes. But for all its haunting beauty, Shipwreck Beach is also a place of danger. The churning surf and jagged rocks that spell doom for these ships pose an ever-present threat to the unwary beachgoer. And the wrecks themselves, with their rusting hulls and hidden chambers, are a lure for the adventurous and the foolhardy, who risk life and limb to explore these metal tombs. Yet still they come, drawn by the strange allure of this place, by the chance to walk among the ghosts of the Pacific and to ponder the mysteries of the deep. Number 14. The Black Sea's Eternal Sentry. In the inky depths of the Black Sea, a ship slumbers. For over 2 millennia, this ancient Greek vessel has lain undisturbed, an eerily pristine time capsule from the days of Odysseus and Achilles. Discovered by chance in 2018, it is a find that has stunned the world of archaeology, a glimpse into a long-vanished world that promises to rewrite the history books. The ship rests more than a mile beneath the waves, its 75-foot hull remarkably intact. The oxygen-free waters at this depth have preserved it flawlessly, arresting the decay that would have long ago claimed a similar vessel in shallower seas. Its mast still stands proud, its rowing benches await ghostly oarsmen, its rudders are ready to navigate the wine-dark sea once more. It is, quite simply, the oldest intact shipwreck ever found, a marvel of preservation showcasing the extraordinary skill of ancient shipwrights. For Professor John Adams and his team from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, the ship is the find of a lifetime. Poring over its weather-beaten timbers and priceless cargo, they are piecing together the story of a vessel that once plied the bustling trade routes of the classical world. What wonders did it carry in its hold? What storms did it endure? What foreign shores did it visit? With every artifact and every plank, the researchers are peeling back the veil of time, revealing the secrets of a world we thought lost to the ages. And as they work, the ancient mariner watches in silence, an eternal sentry guarding the mysteries of the deep. Number 13. The Endurance, a shipwreck that refuses to fade. In the annals of Antarctic exploration, few stories capture the imagination quite like that of Sir Ernest Shackleton's ill-fated Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition. At the heart of this tale of survival against all odds is the ship that bore the expedition's fitting name, the Endurance. Shackleton, whose family motto, "By endurance we conquer," inspired the ship's moniker, set out from South Georgia Island in December 1914 with the ambitious goal of crossing the entire Antarctic continent from one side to the other. However, the Endurance soon found itself trapped in the treacherous ice of the Weddell Sea, far from its intended destination. For months, the crew fought valiantly to free the ship, but their efforts were in vain. The relentless pressure of the ice slowly crushed the Endurance, forcing Shackleton and his men to abandon the ship and set out on a desperate journey across the frozen landscape. Against incredible odds, the entire crew survived. Fast forward a century, and the Endurance once again captured the world's attention. In March 2022, the wreckage of the ship was discovered nearly 10,000 feet below the surface of the Weddell Sea. Remarkably well preserved by the frigid Antarctic waters, the Endurance stands as a haunting echo of the golden age of Antarctic exploration and the indomitable human spirit that has driven us to the ends of the earth in pursuit of knowledge and glory. Number 12. The Lonely Ghosts of Klein, Curaçao. Rising from the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, the tiny island of Klein, Curaçao is a portrait of desolation. Windswept and barren, its pristine beaches and crystal lagoons belie a dark history, whispered in the rusting hulks that lie scattered across its shores. This lonely outpost, just a few miles off the coast of Curaçao, was once a place of sorrow and suffering, where the sick and the enslaved were exiled to live or die far from the eyes of the world. The most striking reminder of this grim past is the wreck of the Maria Bianca Guidesman, a once proud oil tanker that met its end on the island's treacherous reefs in the 1960s. Torn asunder by the fury of the sea, the ship now lies broken and forlorn, its rusting bulk slowly sinking into the sand. For over half a century, it has lain here, a silent sentinel bearing mute witness to the passage of time. But there is another, more sinister presence on Klein, Curaçao. Half hidden in the scrub, the rotting timbers of a nameless ship jut from the sand, a ghostly reminder of the island's darkest chapter. Centuries ago, this remote spot served as a quarantine station for the Dutch West India Company, a place where enslaved Africans stricken with disease were left to perish, far from the plantation houses and towns of Curaçao. The identity of the ship is lost to time, but local legend whispers that it was a slaver, its hold once packed with human misery. Number 11. The fading dream of the world discoverer. Marooned on an uncharted reef in the far reaches of the South Pacific, the World Discoverer is a ship with a tale to tell. Once a proud cruise liner, she now lies gutted and forlorn, her paint peeling and her decks warped by the relentless sun. But the story of her demise is as fascinating as it is tragic, a tale of hubris and misfortune on the high seas. It was supposed to be just another idyllic voyage through the islands of the Solomon Sea. The World Discoverer, with her gleaming white hull and state-of-the-art amenities, was the pride of her fleet, a floating palace for the well-heeled and adventurous. But on April 30th, 2000, disaster struck. The ship ran aground on a submerged reef, its hull gashed open by the jagged coral. As water poured into the wounded vessel, passengers and crew scrambled for the lifeboats, abandoning ship in a desperate bid for survival. In the chaos of the evacuation, the captain chose to stay behind, struggling valiantly to save his mortally wounded ship. But it was a losing battle. As the World Discoverer settled slowly into the turquoise waters, looters descended on the wreck, stripping it of anything of value. In the years that followed, the ravaged hull became a tourist attraction, a rusting monument to the capricious power of the sea. Number 10. The ill-fated quest of the Yellow Submarine. Nestled in the murky depths of a New York City canal, a peculiar sight greets the curious. A bright yellow submarine, its hull encrusted with decades of rust and grime. This is the Quester, the first, the brainchild of an eccentric adventurer named Jerry Bianco. His audacious plan? To locate and salvage the wreck of the famed ocean liner Andrea Doria, which sank off the coast of Nantucket in 1956. Bianco labored for years in secret, constructing his 39-foot vessel from scavenged materials in a Brooklyn shipyard. In 1970, the Quester I was ready for her maiden voyage. But fate had a cruel twist in store. As the submarine was being lowered into the water, the crane cables snapped, sending her plummeting into the canal. Bianco frantically tried to pump out the water and right his creation, but it was no use. The Quester, the first, was hopelessly mired in the muck. For over half a century, the ill-fated submarine has languished in her watery grave, a monument to one man's shattered dreams. Bianco's obsession consumed his life savings and his sanity, leaving him a broken man. Number 9. The concrete Leviathan of Ballina Quay. On the windswept shores of Ireland's River Moy, a strange behemoth lies stranded. The SS Crete Boom, a 263-foot concrete monstrosity, has been a fixture of Ballina Quay since 1937, when she ran aground during a fateful towing operation. Her story is one of wartime ingenuity and peacetime neglect. Constructed in the dark days of World War I, when steel was scarce and submarines prowled the shipping lanes, the Crete Boom was a daring experiment. Her hull, fashioned from reinforced concrete, was designed to withstand the rigors of transporting vital iron ore and coal to fuel the Allied war effort. For nearly 2 decades, she plied the treacherous waters of the Atlantic, a lumbering but indomitable beast of burden. But time and the elements took their toll. By the 1930s, the Crete Boom was a rusting, decrepit hulk. Her final voyage was to be her last, a one-way trip to be scuttled as a coastal barrier. But the capricious tides had other ideas. The ship broke free of her tow and drifted helplessly onto the rocks, where she has remained ever since. A crumbling colossus, a forgotten relic of a bygone age. Number 8. The Minesweeper's Last Stand. In the turbid waters of the Mississippi, a once proud warrior lies broken and vanquished. The USS Inaugural, a battle-scarred veteran of the Pacific Campaign, met her end not in the heat of combat, but in the grip of nature's fury. Her tale is one of triumph and tragedy, of a ship that survived the hell of war, only to be undone by the river she called home. A sleek, admirable-class minesweeper, the Inaugural cut her teeth in the perilous waters off Okinawa. dancing a deadly ballet with the explosive devices that littered the seabed. With the war's end, she seemed destined for a peaceful retirement as a floating museum in St. Louis, a living monument to the courage of her crew. But the Mississippi had other plans. In the Great Flood of 1993, the inaugural was ripped from her moorings like a toy in the hands of a petulant child. Tossed and battered by the raging currents, she was carried downstream for half a mile before running aground, her hull torn asunder by the merciless waters. For nearly 2 decades, the inaugural lay forgotten and forlorn, her once proud decks now a canvas for graffiti artists and urban explorers. It was only in the drought of 2012, when the river receded to a trickle, that her rusting corpse was exposed to the world once more. But there would be no grand restoration, no second act for this warrior of the waves. Her fate was the scrapyard, her legacy reduced to a footnote in the annals of history. Number 7. The Perilous Playground of Batumi. In the shadow of the Caucasus Mountains, where the Black Sea laps at the shores of Georgia, a strange and perilous attraction lures the daring and the foolhardy. The half-sunken wreck of the Ozlem, a Turkish tanker that ran aground near the port of Batumi, has become an unlikely playground for thrill-seeking locals and tourists alike. Ozlem's story is shrouded in mystery. Some say she fell victim to the treacherous currents that swirl along the coast, dragging unsuspecting vessels onto the rocks. Others whisper of darker deeds, of a crew driven mad by the isolation of the sea, of a captain who deliberately steered his ship to its doom. Whatever the truth, the Ozlem now rests in an eternal slumber, her rusting bulk jutting from the waters like the skeletal remains of some primordial beast. And it is here that the adventurers come, clambering over her barnacle-encrusted decks and diving from her crumbling superstructure into the churning seas below. It is a perilous pastime, one that has claimed more than a few lives over the years. The jagged metal of the wreck, the hidden undertows, the sheer folly of it all. These are the lures that draw the young and the reckless to the Ozlem's rusting embrace. And yet they come, day after day, tempting fate for a fleeting taste of adrenaline and glory. In this forgotten corner of the world, the Ozlem has become a legend, a test of courage for those who would laugh in the face of death. Number 6. The Ghost Ship of the Namib. In the scorched heart of the Namibian desert, a strange apparition looms on the horizon. Miles from the nearest shore, the rusting skeleton of a once mighty ship rises from the shifting sands like a mirage, a haunting reminder of the untamable power of the sea. This is the Edward Boleyn, a 300-foot behemoth that ran aground on the treacherous Skeleton Coast in 1909. For over a century, she has lain here, slowly succumbing to the relentless onslaught of wind and sand, her steel bones picked clean by the elements. The Boleyn story is one of hubris and miscalculation. Bound for the ports of West Africa, she ventured too close to the shore, underestimating the strength of the currents and the guile of the shifting sandbars. In an instant, she was caught in the grip of the seabed, her hull torn asunder by the jagged rocks. Rescue attempts proved futile. The ship was too far gone, too firmly wedged in the sand. And so she was abandoned, her crew left to a fate unknown, her cargo scattered to the winds. In the intervening years, the desert has reclaimed her, the relentless dunes swallowing all but her topmost decks. But the Boleyn is not alone in this graveyard of ships. All around her, the shattered remnants of lesser vessels lie half buried in the sand, their timbers bleached and their iron rusted. And in the bowels of the Boleyn herself, a new master holds court, a vicious pack of jackals who guard their steel palace with tooth and claw. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Scientists just found the world's oldest abandoned ship. Built in the early 1800s, it was one of the very first iron-hulled, steam-powered ships. Then it vanished, mysteriously, with no trace of its crew or any clue as to why. In 2016, explorers discovered it on a remote island. Strangely, it looked like it had been carefully docked, yet there were no signs of human life nearby, no remains, no camps, nothing. Now, the ship is overgrown with trees, and to this day, no one knows what really happened or how it ended up there. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Number 5. The Fertilizer freighter of Baltray Beach. On a desolate stretch of sand in Ireland's Boyne Valley, a rusting colossus looms over the pounding surf. This is the MV Irish Trader, a once proud freighter that met a grim fate on Baltray Beach in 1974. Her story is one of misfortune, error, and the unyielding power of the sea. The Irish Trader was a workhorse of the waves, a 472-foot behemoth that ferried cargo across the oceans. On that fateful day in 1974, she was laden with a heavy load of fertilizer, bound for the port of Drogheda. But as she approached the coast, something went terribly wrong. Some say it was a navigational error, others whisper of equipment failure and human folly. Whatever the cause, the result was catastrophic. With a sickening crunch of metal on rock, the Irish Trader ran aground on the treacherous shoals of Baltray. Her crew, shaken but unharmed, could only watch helplessly as the waves battered their stricken vessel. Salvage teams managed to offload the ship's precious cargo, but the Irish Trader herself was beyond saving. Her hull, punctured and flooded, had become her own coffin. In the nearly 5 decades since that calamitous day, the Irish Trader has become a landmark of sorts, a rusting monument to the sea's uncaring fury. Her once mighty hull has been ravaged by time and tide, transformed into a pitted, corroded shell. The sands around her are a treacherous quagmire, a sucking mire that can swallow a man whole. Even now, the wreck exudes an aura of menace, a silent warning to those who would trifle with the ocean's might. Number 4. The Ghost of the Fun Ship. Shrouded in the mists of the Welsh coast, a once grand vessel lies in rusting repose. This is the Duke of Lancaster, a majestic passenger ferry turned party boat turned derelict ruin. Her story is a tale of grand dreams and broken promises, of a ship that reached for the stars but found only the unforgiving embrace of the tides. Launched in 1956, the Duke was a marvel of her age, a sleek and stylish cruise liner that ferried the well-heeled across the Irish Sea in unparalleled luxury. For 2 decades, she reigned supreme, her decks echoing with the laughter of merry revelers and the clink of champagne glasses. But as the jet age dawned and the fortunes of ocean travel waned, the Duke found herself adrift in a changing world. In a last-ditch bid for relevance, she was reborn in the late 70s as the Fun Ship, a floating pleasure palace replete with bars, arcades, and even a fairground. But the good times were not to last. Beset by legal woes and local opposition, the Duke's new owners abandoned her to the elements, leaving her to rust and rot in the unforgiving salt air. For nearly 40 years, the once proud Duke has languished in her watery grave, a hulking ghost ship haunting the Welsh shoreline. But even in death, she clings to her former glory. Urban explorers who brave her crumbling decks have discovered a time capsule of 80s excess. Vintage arcade games gathering dust, their flickering screens a poignant reminder of brighter days. The Duke may be a shadow of her former self, but in the echoes of her empty halls, the laughter of long-ago merrymakers still rings out, a ghostly tribute to the ship that once was. Number 3. The Many Lives of the USS Sachem. From the murky depths of a Kentucky creek, a ghost from America's past emerges. Her name is the USS Sachem, but over her long and storied life, she has borne many monikers and served many masters. Hers is a tale of reinvention and resilience, of a ship that refused to go gentle into that good night. Born in 1902 as the Celt, a sleek and luxurious steam yacht, she was the plaything of the fabulously wealthy, a floating palace for Gilded Age royalty. But when the guns of August roared in 1914, the Celt found herself drafted into the service of a nation at war. Rechristened the USS Sachem, she patrolled the perilous waters of the Atlantic, a silent sentinel against the U-boat menace. With peace came a return to the high life, as the Sachem once again played host to the glitterati of the Jazz Age. But the looming specter of another world war would not be denied. In 1942, the grand old lady donned navy gray once more, this time as the USS Fenakite, a humble patrol boat prowling the home front against Axis saboteurs. But the Sachem's story did not end with the guns falling silent. In the ensuing decades, she would live a dozen lives: a fishing boat, a party vessel, a floating restaurant. She would even find a strange measure of fame, her battered decks graced by none other than the material girl herself in Madonna's Papa Don't Preach video. But time and tide spare none, not even the great. Now, the once grand Sachem lies abandoned and forgotten, her paint peeling and her hull encrusted with the detritus of ages. But even in her decrepitude, she exudes a haunting beauty, a silent witness to a century of American dreams and American struggles. Number 2. The Ghost Fleet of Tangalooma. On the sun-drenched shores of Australia's Moreton Island, a phantom armada slumbers beneath the waves. 15 ships, their hulls encrusted with a riot of color, rest in serene repose, a hidden wonderland just a stone's throw from the pristine sands of Tangalooma. This is the Tangalooma Rex, a stunning monument to human ingenuity and nature's indomitable spirit. The story of the Rex began in 1963, when the Queensland government embarked on an audacious plan. Seeking to create a safe anchorage for small boats, they scuttled a fleet of decommissioned vessels just off the coast. Over the next 15 years, more and more ships were added to the underwater graveyard, each one a silent sentinel guarding the shores of Moreton Bay. But as the years passed, something remarkable began to happen. The Rex, once stark and lifeless, started to bloom with an explosion of marine life. Coral polyps, drawn by the shelter of the hulls, began to take root, their delicate tendrils transforming rusted metal into vibrant undersea gardens. Schools of tropical fish, their scales glinting like jewels in the sunlight, darted among the nooks and crannies of the ships. The Tangalooma Rex had become an accidental oasis, a refuge for the wondrous creatures of the deep. Number 1. HMS Cerberus, the iron warrior that never saw battle. Rusting silently in the gentle waters of Half Moon Bay, the HMVS Cerberus tells a story of naval innovation, colonial pride, and ultimate abandonment. This weathered iron hull, Britain's only surviving colonial warship, has defied the elements for over 150 years, even as preservation efforts have repeatedly fallen short. Constructed in 1870 during the height of British naval expansion, the Cerberus was a technological marvel of her time. Despite being built in Australia, she flew the British flag proudly, as Australia remained firmly under colonial rule. Her design incorporated revolutionary features: a low freeboard monitor-class vessel with rotating gun turrets and ironclad protection that represented the cutting edge of Victorian naval engineering. Initially serving as part of the Victorian Naval Fleet, the Cerberus later transitioned to the newly formed Royal Australian Navy after the Commonwealth of Australia was established in 1901. Throughout her service, she enjoyed what sailors might call a charmed existence, never once firing her guns in actual combat, even during the global conflict of World War I. By the time the war erupted, the once innovative vessel had already been deemed too outdated for frontline service, and instead found purpose as a supply ship and floating munitions store. After her retirement from active duty in 1924, her fate was quickly decided. Rather than preserving this unique piece of naval history, authorities chose a utilitarian end. Just 2 years later, she was deliberately scuttled at Half Moon Bay. There, she served a new purpose as a breakwater, shielding smaller vessels, yachts, and visitors at the nearby Black Rock Yacht Club from the unpredictable fury of the sea. For decades, the Cerberus remained a familiar sight to local sailors and beachgoers, until 1993, when significant portions of her superstructure suddenly collapsed, marking what many believed would be her final surrender to time and tide. Yet remarkably, much of the vessel continues to resist complete destruction, and in a touching display of maritime tradition, she still flies an Australian flag from her smokestack, a proud symbol of her heritage that has persisted through decades of neglect. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.